make. Ain't no lot to see. All those plans I made for myself, I got nobody else to lean on. Got so far with my head in the clouds. Now it's time to get
100 Studios, the Big Biz Show, and our affiliates and our hosts are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers.
Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming
are suitable or advisable for any person, or that an investment in such securities will be profitable in general.
Given the nature of the companies profiled and a lack of an active trading market for their securities, investing is highly speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We profile
selected publicly traded and privately held companies on our program.
specific questions on comp and
Most of these companies that we profile have provided compensation to Loft 100 Studios and its hosts for the profile coverage.
From time to time, we sell shares of the companies profiled in the open market that we receive as compensation for coverage of client companies.
But never sell stock if we are speaking about, interviewing, or covering a public company who has paid us compensation.
specific questions.
Specific questions on compensation can be directed to producer@sullyentertainmentgroup.com.
Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before purchasing any securities mentioned on this program.
Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk. We encourage our listeners to invest carefully and read the investor information available at the websites on the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC at sec.gov, or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, at finra.org.
Welcome aboard.
Big Biz Show. Great to have you along today. They know when I'm going to stop this. They know when I'm going to stop it. Well, everyone Mark did. Can we still bring up the fact that Mike Costa comes back after? You actually look good. You look tight. You look good.
Thank you. Thank you.
You look good. You have the I like the new. What do you call it? The new. It's called the Huckleberry, isn't it?
It is.
Called the Val Kilmer.
It's the Val Kilmer.
You know what I'd like to see?
Yeah.
Now that we've got the band and we've got you.
Yeah.
I'd like to see. Guys, how do you think? What do you feel about Tombstone? The musical. Oh, wow. What songs would we have on for
It's the time of my life.
Oh my God.
The time of my life.
He's just dying. He's just dying on stage. That's good. I like that. And don't you love how he holds it like this? Like Bob Barker.
Yeah, oh my God. Yep.
Yeah. You know Bob Barker was a wonderful man on screen. Off screen. So, I don't know. Was he a nice guy, or do you like? I've heard some Casey Kasem outtakes. Have you?
Oh, he was a.
I like big butts, and I cannot lie. Damn it, get it right. We need to play that one. Okay, hey, listen. One of my favorite guys in the world is David Luci. He's the president and CEO of Acurx Pharmaceuticals. Their stock symbol is ACXP. The reason that I like this guy is because he is very plain speaking about the fact that we are in trouble with respect to antibiotic candidates. Okay, and it was funny when I was on this bike ride, our Challenge Athletes Foundation bike ride a week ago, and everything was fine. And then last Friday, I got a horrible eye infection, and it was from a laceration that apparently I suffered when I was riding my bike. Had my glasses off for a second and got some stuff in. Didn't realize it. A week later, gets infected. And what did they give me? Of course, they gave me steroidal antibiotics. And the first thing I think of is I should call David and ask him if this stuff's going to work. But this is part of the treatment cycle that we see every time something goes south. And after a while. The way our bodies react, the way just medicine goes, you're going to stop reacting to this stuff. David, great to have you along today, pal. Thanks for joining us once again. And isn't this a perfect example of just the go-to is give the guy some antibiotics, it's going to be fine, and eventually it's not going to be fine, correct?
That's right. That's right. What's got to happen is the pipeline of R&D phase antibiotics has to be kind of completely revamped, and it's stocked with dozens and dozens of more antibiotic candidates that are each a new class, so that we don't lose these antibiotics and go into a post-antibiotics era, which would be like, one of those old Val Kilmer cowboy movies where you get infected and all they can do is like take a wet cloth and wipe your forehead.
For example, right?
Right.
For example. Those old Val Kilmer cowboy movies.
This damn tuberculosis.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
David, my question, so you guys set out to treat C. difficile infection, and as you went out to treat that, you realized you couldn't use the typical recipe for antibiotics, correct? Is that sort of how the story goes, and then suddenly realized, boy, this is a bigger picture than we thought?
Well, the recipe was set by two retiring research professors at UMass. They did what they could. They got $3 million in government funding to get into preclinical. We took it from there. What we didn't realize was that our antibiotic has a dual impact. It's actually restoring the healthy microbiome in the process while you're taking the 10 days of therapy. So not only are we seeing, complete cure rates without any failures thus far, as we now entered phase 2B, at the same time, we're restoring the healthy microbiome by the third day of treatment, which means that you're very unlikely to get a recurrent infection.
Yeah, and go ahead, Mike.
No, David, is mainstream America waking up more to C. difficile? Because I'm seeing a lot more advertisements on a lot of social media platforms talking exactly about that.
They're definitely waking up to it, and there's 500,000 cases a year. The reason Sanofi and Pfizer both tried and failed, but tried a vaccine for frontline therapy for C. diff, is because it's a $1.7 billion market. In the frontline therapy, oral vancomycin is very vulnerable. 20 to 40% of the patients have multiple recurring infections. So once you get the C. difficile, which is like the worst case of diarrhea you'd ever had, you just keep getting it over and over again for up to a year or two.
And Michael, talk about the top line problem and why it's so important for newly approved antibiotics in a new class of antibiotics, opposed to just being a new generation of an existing class. I think this is really important to understand.
Yeah, so what happens is bacteria, they have memories. So if we shake hands, it's like putting two cell phones together. The bacteria on my hand, they've experienced certain antibiotics, and they meet the bacteria on your hand. Now they share all their experiences. So they can find a way not to be killed, to avoid being killed by antibiotics they can recognize. So anytime you have a new class of penicillin, of which there's been like 4 or 5 classes, dozens of different drugs like amoxicillin and that, next generation, the bacteria is easy to recognize that that's another penicillin. But when you have a new class of drugs, it's never been seen before by any bacteria. So you're going to last longer, efficacious for a much longer period of time.
David, talk about your ongoing phase 2 clinical trial for your C. difficile that we've been talking about a bit.
Well, so far the data has been consistent and, amazing, just like the phase 1 and the phase 2A data. We understand from our data safety monitoring committee that there's a possibility we could early terminate due to success, as we did with the 2A trial. So we're really hoping for a big splash in the first half of 23. We're hoping that is a resounding effect on our stock because, as you know, there's elections coming up, and hopefully by the time we come out with that data, there's a better economic global environment. And beyond that, also in the first half in April, we put in for a non-dilutive grant of $16 million for our second antibiotic candidate. It too is the same new class, and it treats MRSA infections.
Wow.
And that money would take us all the way to the start of phase 2 for 5 years.
And that's pretty significant because of the word non-dilutive, by the way. That means
Absolutely.
that this stock's not going to be diluted.
So, Sully, one thing I'd like to say is I've started a lot of companies. I've sold all of them that I've started so far since leaving my law firm in New York. The one thing that I like the most is that we have multiple shots on goal, and they're big shots, meaning big value inflection points. And when you can create that kind of bonfire, they don't all have to hit, for this thing to get really, really interesting.
Right. Well, I mean, it's obviously interesting, and we're going to keep having you back because, David, this is a super important conversation, and it's one that everyone pays attention to every time because of the need for new antibiotics, and not just a new generation of existing class. We'll see you next week, pal. Great to talk to you. David Luci, Acurx Pharmaceuticals. All right, the show continues. Sully, Costa, Val Kilmer. Coming soon, Tombstone, the musical. Can't wait to hear your version of Ain't No TB High Enough.